Hey everyone, Ninja the Vidoc here, where we talk about games, movie, and all things entertainment, the things that you love and enjoy with a bit of intelligence to provide some thought-provoking commentary that hopefully you all will get some value from. And in this video, we're here to talk about the recent news about Sony canceling their two unannounced live service games, and in particular, the God of War live service game. Was this a bad thing? Was this a smart thing? Is Sony on the right track? Who knows? We're here to talk about it. Let's dig in. And well, in other news, I definitely saw the headline where PlayStation canceled two unannounced live service games. And, I already knew that Sony was, pushing hard in to build a live service game, like more than one, like tons of them. But really the interesting part was the fact that they were trying to make a God of War game. Now, God of War is it's an action game at its core, and two, with the recent God of War games, it's a game that is definitely a story type of game. Like I can't imagine what a live service game for God of War would be. I mean, would it be like a dungeon crawler kind of thing? Maybe like a Diablo kind of thing, Path of Exiles kind of thing. And I mean, I guess in terms of environment that could work, but God of War game isn't like a dungeon crawler. I mean, when you have that brand, you have that IP. I mean, what do people think of? They think of like a crazy action game, and today, crazy action game with a really, really well told story that that really hits the heart of people who play it. Right? I mean, you can't deny that. God of War, the last two games are definitely probably more known than the original God of War games that came out like the PS2 and PS3, right? I would argue that the last two God of War games have pretty much become the thing that represents what God of War is. So the fact that Sony tried to make a God of War game, I mean, that just tells me that they were just literally just trying to capitalize on God of War as an IP, and not so much maybe making a game that really fit the IP. So, I mean, a part of me does say they probably waste a lot of money, and also it probably is a good thing that they didn't try this, because I imagine, or that they canceled it. However much it probably cost them in terms of money to have to cancel that, it probably is a smart decision to just cancel it and maybe avoid the risk of having to damage the God of War brand, in my opinion. So, yeah, live service games, not a really big fan of them. And, hopefully maybe this is a sign that, things are going to be a bit different going forward. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just, so I have this list from Reddit pulled up, and it's just highlighting all the different live service games canceled by just Sony alone. Right. So of the things that were released and seemingly are still ongoing, you have Helldivers 2, which is doing well. You have this MLB The Show, and then Gran Turismo, right? Which, okay, that's fine. But then you look at the list of other things that have been like just outright canceled, or its own category, shuttered, which is starting off with Concord. But then from the canceled list, we have this God of War game, we have a Twisted Metal live service game, The Last of Us. Seemingly somewhere down the line, there was a Spider-Man live service game in the conversation as well. There was another live service game referred to as Operation Payback by Bungie. The list goes on and on. This is just like a couple of line items here. But with all of these different games and, the nature of live service, meaning that it's supposed to just be continuous and ongoing, just seems like bad business, if I'm being honest. And I'm not a business person, but this seems like bad business, right? Like at a certain point, you reach like a maximum market share, and there's only so much time and so many people all around. And so ultimately, all these things are going to start cannibalizing one another. And if every studio is working on a live service game, like why is this better than just creating like a singular game in and of itself and selling that one thing? While, compared to a live service game where you create this one thing, but then you have to keep updating it and keep building it up from that. I don't know. I mean, like, maybe there was some initial cost benefit analysis to that, but I mean, it just seems like with a lot of these live service games, ultimately when they come out or greatly down the development cycle, they just all turned out to be half baked in the end. And so just think about how much money was lost because of that, and how much different stories, different games, different pieces of art that we're not going to be able to get or could have gotten during this period of time. So it is quite sad as well to kind of see this list.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely, at the end of the day, it just ultimately is, a company. I mean, it's understandable, right? I mean, it's live service games, especially the early ones, have made quite a lot of money, right? So it's understandable for any other company now to try to make a new live service game so that they can, reap the benefits, the rewards from having that success from a live service game. But ultimately, the problem is, companies are trying to build a live service game first versus trying to build a game that just happens to incorporate or work best with a live service model, right? It's kind of just flipped, right? And I definitely, you reading off that list of the live service games that got canceled. That's just a clear example of that. It's just, hey, we want to make money, so let's just make a live service game, and that's the goal, right? Make a live service game, and hopefully it'll stick, kind of thing. But games are games for a reason. Ultimately, they got to be entertaining, and like we said before, games are a form of art, and the last time I checked, making something for money isn't technically considered art at its core. Although maybe if you're making a social commentary kind of art thing, maybe that's different, right? I don't know, but yeah, I think it's unfortunate, and I think you make a good point saying that all the resources and money and time and effort put into making a live service game. Imagine what new stories could have been told if they put that towards like a single player game, whether long or short. So yeah.
And while looking at this list too, I mean, like, I don't necessarily have anything against live service games. I think if done well, it's totally fine. We can keep it. I mean, Helldivers 2 is a live service game, and I've pumped in 130 hours into that thing, and I'm still having a blast overall, right? So I think these things can be done if done well. But I think the issue here is that it's just like, why are we having all of these different studios chase live service? Like I said earlier, they're all going to cannibalize each other at a certain point. So why not do just a couple of games here or there that maybe are live service, right? And have it be just sort of like either an original idea or IP that develops into something, right? So something like Helldivers, which originally wasn't a live, Helldivers 1 wasn't a live service game, right? And then Helldivers 2, they were able to successfully incorporate it all. And I think, with their numbers on like Steam, they still have a pretty astronomical player base, right? When you compare it to some of these other games that still continue to have these large player bases post-release, right? Things like a Call of Duty or Fortnite or anything like that. Helldivers 2 is still kicking pretty strongly. And so, like, looking at the list, I think if they were very strategic about it, you could have captured these things if they played their cards right. So maybe like with something like Twisted Metal, I think that could actually have been a great live service game, but you just have Twisted Metal, or at least for like a period of time, and then you move on to the next live service game after like a couple years or something like that. Stagger these things out a little bit better. But it seems like, a bunch of these things were expected to release all at the same time, but the inherent business model is that you're supposed to draw players in and keep them in for an extended period of time. I don't think that's how that works, right? Like, time is a finite resource. Eventually players are going to settle on one or two things, and they're just going to lock in, and that's what they're going to play. But yeah, it's incredibly puzzling to me.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. I mean, it's just kind of like the whole, like, Another example I can think of this is like Disney, right? When they announced a brand new trilogy, the sequel trilogy, right? I mean, obviously they just announced making it. They were gonna make a new Star Wars movie, but there wasn't really like a concrete plan. And if we're kind of bring this topic back to Sony, it's just like, yeah, hey, we're gonna make live service games. We're gonna make like Sony live service games, and it's probably more like, hey, we're gonna see which one sticks versus like having like a real like definite plan. So yeah, but we'll see. Hopefully Sony learns a lesson, and for the games that do survive, like Helldivers 2, I mean, I agree, Helldivers 2 is a great game. Great job for the stuff they're making and the really good efforts that their developers are doing for Helldivers 2 to kind of keep that story, that gameplay going, keep it intriguing, and also having the dialogue with the community. Definitely props to them. So any live service games that's continue to be successful, then I would say they'll deserve it. So otherwise, yeah, I would really prefer much more resources put into a story type of game, because we could use more of them for sure. That's for sure. There's a market out there. You hear news about people saying that people want to play online and people want to play live service and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, there's a market for that, but there's a market for single player games too, still out there. So
yeah, and I think. I mean, on that note, I think there's something to be said about just like having an online co-op function, right? Like that's all you really need. Like people have been talking about it with Elden Ring for a period of time, right? And there is like co-op to a certain degree already baked in, but on the PC side, like there's like continuous mods, so you can like really play through the whole entire thing together with your friends. You have other things like Borderlands, which is a pretty expansive world, but it's still self-contained, and you can just get 4 buddies together and play through the whole thing. And I think that's totally fine, right? Like, and on occasions, maybe you release DLC here or there in the future. But yeah, I think with the current model of a lot of live service games out there, where it just seems like, oh, there's an event always happening, but it's really just busy work. Like at a certain point, these games do become a second job, right? And that's not fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey folks, that's the video. Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, go ahead and like, comment, and or subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. But until next time, bye-bye.